Dr. Jennifer Bird. I'm a biblical scholar, and I like to talk about what's going on in the Christian Bible, the two primary testaments of the Christian Bible, and talk about what people do with what they find there. I've decided to do a bit of a series on some of the stories related to Jesus and either things about him or the parables he's telling that are related to finances, because I think I misunderstood them growing up, and it took me being in graduate school and being able to bring in a different lens because of doing that kind of academic study, to be able to see some of these stories and actually make better sense of them than I ever had growing up in the church. So there'll be several of these. I'm not sure what to call them. I'm not sure it's really Does the Bible Tell You So, but it's interesting stuff, I think. So immediately prior to these stories, verse 31 of chapter 18 of Luke, Jesus took the 12 aside and said to them, "See, we're going up to Jerusalem, and everything that is written about the Son of Man by the prophets will be accomplished. He will be handed over to the Gentiles, blah, blah, blah." So he is headed to Jerusalem. He is from kind of the northern territory in Galilee. He's been traveling around for a year, visiting people, talking about the good news for the poor. So I ask you, what is good news for the poor? Right? It is relief from some form of financial exploitation and financial duress, right? So there is a piece of this conversation that I never knew about until graduate school, or even post-graduate school. And that is, Romans noticed that the Jews collected at Jerusalem once a year for the most part. And so they decided, for that or whatever other reason, they decide to ask the Jews to collect taxes for them. Just that in and of itself. I just think you should process that if you've never heard that before, okay? And how does that shift things? And then how does that shift your understanding of references to tax collectors? Because not only are tax collectors just unpleasant because they're collecting taxes, but they're also the men in the temple, right? The religious leaders in the temple have been asked to be the ones to make the collections. So any tax collector is actually associated directly with the temple. And these men have been put in a position, right? They're forced into this position. And then, as often happens, people who have a position of power sometimes take advantage of it. And so this isn't about, Pharisees being bad or Sadducees being evil. That's not what this is. This is about a system of exploitation that was initiated by the Roman government, the Romans, right? The Roman Empire. And so when you look at what's happening to the people, the masses, they are being exploited in this tax collection process and beyond their ability to pay. And all of the things that go along with that when it comes to talking about tax collectors, when it talks to survival, when it comes to these parables that Jesus says that people turn into some sort of metaphor about the spiritual life, but he's actually talking about people trying to survive, right? So I'm going to briefly engage the story of Zacchaeus. So I'd like you to, if you can, I'd love to encourage you to think about, instead of making it all about getting into heaven and Jesus saving us from our sins, what if you just take a step back and think about these through the lens of the economics? What is happening here? Who has the power? How does any of this that's being said and talked about connect back to being a good Jew? Because being a good Jew means you worship Yahweh and you take care of each other. You don't exploit each other, okay? So when Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through it, a man was there named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. This is redundant, right? And Jericho is not far northeast of Jerusalem, so he's close to main base, right? Okay. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd, he could not because he was short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to see him, because he was going to pass that way. When Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, hurry up and come on down, because I need to stay at your house today." And I love talking about this with students. Why would Jesus want to stay at the house of the main tax collector days before he enters Jerusalem? Well, now let's go to that place instead of why is he eating with the tax collector? Was the sinner and tax collector? No, let's talk about that. Why would he want to eat with the chief tax collector? Does Jesus want to chew him out? Does Jesus want to know who he should contact when he gets to Jerusalem to talk about taking out the Romans? Do you see what I'm saying? Someone suggested he just wants one last nice meal. I like that. but go to that place. Go to the place of economics and politics, right? So he hurried down, was happy to welcome him. All who saw it began to grumble and said, he's gone to be the guest of one who's a sinner. Right, okay. He's gone to be the guest of our own neighbor who's been fleecing us for years. That's what they're saying, right? Zacchaeus stood up. So we missed this in the English. The Greek indicates a passage of time. So at the end of the day, Zacchaeus stands up and says to the Lord, look, half of my possessions, Lord, I will give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, which is funny, right? I will pay back 4 times as much. And what I find interesting about that is this element of a nod to how exploitative things were and how bad interest rates were at times. They were outrageous, 50%. There were times where the interest rate just made it absolutely impossible to repay debts. Jesus said to him, today, salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek out and save the lost. Jesus has not died on a cross yet. He's not that. This isn't about salvation from your sins because Jesus died for you. This is about a form of salvation that the Gospel of Luke talks about, that is about addressing the iniquities and injustices in this world. Something to think about. See you next time.